In this video, I'm going to show you how to summarize categorical data in a tabular form. So the tabular representation of categorical data happens in a frequency distribution table. Frequency is the summary of data showing the number or the frequency of items in each of several non-overlapping classes. So if you have categorical data, you have different categories, and you're going to count the number of data points that fall into each category. So again, it's the number or the frequency of the items. Now, based on the frequency, we can also calculate what's called relative frequency. Relative frequency takes your frequency in each category and then it divides it by n, which is the total number of data points that you have. Then percent frequency is the relative frequency multiplied by 100. So in some sense, it is the relative frequency, but in percentages. Let me show you an example to make these clear. One of the questions I asked you on the survey was where you come from. So the responses I received were US West Coast, US South, US Midwest, and other countries. And here's the frequency of the data that I received. So 34 students responded to the survey. Out of the 34 people who responded to the survey, 24 said they're from the West Coast. 1 said she or he is from the South. 5 said they were from the Midwest. And 4 people said they're from other countries. So all I'm doing here is that I'm counting the frequency of West Coast, frequency of South, frequency of Midwest, and frequency of other country in my sample. Now this is my frequency. If I want to calculate the relative frequency, again remember relative frequency takes the frequency in each category and then it divides it by the total number of observations or the total number of data points that you have. So for relative frequency for the first class, I divide 24 by 34 and that gives me 0.7059. Then for South, I divide 1 by the total of 34, and that gives me 0.0294. For Midwest, I divide 5 by 34, and for other country, I divide 4 by 34. Notice the total for the relative frequency is always equal to 1. So if you did your calculations and you added up things and it's anything other than a 1, you've made a mistake in your calculations, because that's the total line should be every single observation you have in your data. So it's basically a 34 divided by 34, so it must be equal to a 1. Now these are the relative frequencies. If we want to calculate percent frequencies so that we can tell what percentage of the observations are in each class, we are going to multiply the relative frequency by 100 so we can present the data in percentages. So if you take the column of relative frequency and just multiply that by 100, you get the percent frequencies. So for the West Coast class, we have 70.59%. For South, we have 2.94%. Midwest gives us 14.71%. And other countries is 11.76%. Notice the grand total for the percent frequency must be 100% because that's all of the observations in your sample. So what does this tell me? This tells me about a little more than actually 70% of the students in my class come from the West Coast. Just under 3% of the students in my class come from the South. About 15% come from Midwest, and about 12% come from other countries. So this is useful information in terms of the distribution of the home place for Econ 216 students. And that's how we create a tabular representation of categorical data.